Mention gruel, and thanks to Charles Dickens' Oliver Twist, many of us will imagine a watery slop served to the child inmates of a Victorian London workhouse. But according to a new study, it seems some Neolithic farmers in Denmark were choosing gruel over bread. Why on earth would they do that? At a Neolithic settlement on the Danish island Funen, dating back 5,500 years, archaeologists have discovered both grinding stones and grains from early cereals. However, new research reveals that the inhabitants did not use the stones to grind the cereal grains. Instead of making bread, they likely prepared porridge or gruel from the grains. Hello there, I'm Michael Bott.
I'm Rupert Soskin. Welcome.
We're the Prehistory guys, as usual, doing news about old stuff. So glad you could join us. Please do hit the like and subscribe buttons. And if you've got a moment and would like to support us in some way, do take a look at our Patreon page and the GÖBEKLI TEPE Stonehenge project page. Links down below as usual. So, Rupert, of all the headlines from all the prehistory outlets in the world, we chose one about Neolithic gruel. Explain, how did that happen?
Do you know, well, it's actually a remarkable piece of research, really, because there's part of you thinks, well, why has no one thought of doing this before? And where the paper says that from this site in Denmark that that the analysis has shown that they weren't making bread, they weren't grinding flour, put it that way, to make bread. So from all the other plant remains that they've found, they've deduced that they were making porridge, gruel, soup, whatever it might have been. But it does raise that question that this is a piece of research that's never been done before. In Denmark, they've found that they weren't making bread, they were making gruel. And that just makes you think, well, how many other sites around the world where we have always presumed from grinding stones that they were making bread?
Well, ain't that...
were they?
You make a good point.
Big question. So it's a fascinating piece of research, this.
Because it is just focused on this one site. It's not Denmark's just this one site.
Yes.
Anyway...
ripples.
Yeah, we'll get into that probably as we go through the article, which is taken from Aarhus University, Faculty of Natural Sciences. Sciences. It seems to be closest to the source anyway, but is a very good synthesis of the paper, which is quite an extraordinary feat if you've read the paper.
It really is. There have been quite a few articles that have come out on the back of this research. This is by far the clearest. The paper itself is, should we call it dense?
The paper itself? Okay. Right, okay. Anyway, I'm going to start reading from it. Okay. A grinding stone, as the name suggests, is a stone with a sufficiently flat surface that allows grinding against it with another smaller stone. The one in the picture above and a further 13 like it were found by archaeologists when they excavated the remains of a settlement from the early Neolithic Beaker culture at Frydenlund on Strandby Mark, southeast of Hörby on Funen. That's the first place that I should interject. Beaker culture is something that, we've not dealt with much here, prehistory guys. It's an area of ignorance for us, but just for us and everybody, Beaker culture was an early farming culture in northern and central and Eastern Europe during from about 4000 to 2800 BCE. And its prominence is in marking the introduction of agriculture and cattle farming to Scandinavia.
Yes.
And the name refers to the cultures commonly found clay beakers that have got funnel-shaped necks.
Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, it's worth just tossing in the mix here that most of the research that I've read, and I suspect it's the same for you, Mike, that in relation to Beaker, as you say, we don't talk about it that much, but there was a very big piece of research that was done a few years ago that was looking at funnel beaker in Scandinavia, and they analysed pots from, I can't remember how many sites. It was a lot of pots from a lot of sites.
Oh, I remember, yeah.
And the interesting thing there was the researchers were interpreting from this research that this was really a transition where the hunter-gatherers were meeting and exchanging with the farmers. So they were exchanging different types of goods. So you had some pots that held plant materials, some plants that held cheeses, milks, and one of the interpretations as well, possibilities there, that the reason that we now have a funnel beaker, so a funnel-shaped pot appearing, is that you could tie ropes around that, wouldn't slip off. You could tie ropes to put it over your donkey or whatever. Easier to carry around, basically.
Okay,
And I find that really evocative. You can imagine that.
Well, there's so much. I mean, I remember doing that, and that is about the interface between the original hunter-gatherers and the funnel beaker, or wherever the funnel beaker were coming from. The Mickelberg culture comes to mind.
Well done.
Which is, but yeah, we can't go there now. Otherwise, we'd be off in the weeds for a long time if we haven't already been in the weeds for long enough. But the discovery. This discovery is the most extensive find of grinding stones and grains from the funnel beaker culture in the entire region, apparently. We are told.
Yeah.
So they also found over 5,000 charred grain kernels of naked barley, emmer wheat, and durum wheat, amongst others. And this paper doesn't go on to say much about it, but there's quite a lot about it in the actual paper itself, in that the presence of durum wheat is significant. It's unusual, It suggests more contact with the other cultures west, but to find durum wheat here at this time, not that we know a lot about wheat, but we're told that it's significant. We don't know a lot about it, but it's significant. Maybe more about that later on as we go along. One might offhand assume that the inhabitants 5,500 years ago ground their cereals into flour and baked bread with it, and that has indeed been the typical interpretation of grinding stones from that time. But they didn't. Well, I like the way the writer has gone full Jeremy Clarkson for me.
Yes.
But
I approve of that style of writing.
Yes. An international research team from Denmark, Germany and Spain has now analysed both the grains and the stones, concluding that the grinding stones were not used to grind cereals. The researchers examined microscopic mineral plant remains, phytoliths and starch grains, small cavities on the surfaces of the stone. And I see what that means. And starch grains, small cavities on the surface of the stones. Surprisingly, they did not find any evidence of cereals. The researchers found only a few phytoliths on the stones, and the starch grains they identified came from wild plants instead of cereals. The researchers found only a few... I've just read that sentence. We have not identified the plants the starch grains originated from. We have merely ruled out the most obvious candidates, namely the cereals found at the settlement, which were not ground, as well as various collected species, including hazelnuts, explains archaeobotanist Wilmut Ut from Musgard Museum. So before we finish off, the rest of the thing, there's a few things to unpack. Well, not really. It's the basic thing, the described the basic premise of the thing, that they were choosing gruel over bread. And our question is why? And
but it might equally be a why not.
Indeed.
Because I can imagine that making gruels, any kind of, I keep thinking of them as soups actually, but that's probably because I don't eat porridge. But it's if you have gathered wild whatevers, because some of the other things that they've mentioned in the plants that have been found, whether it's through impressions in soils or in burnt remains, that there were lots of fruits as well, raspberries, dewberries, sloes as well. That, in fact, you said when we were talking about this some other time when we were chatting about it, that it sounded like people were making flapjacks or, or whatever. There's such a huge potential in these foodstuffs. But, if asking the question, why gruel as opposed to bread, you think of the amount of preparation time to make yourself a loaf of bread, as opposed to the amount of effort or the smaller amount of effort necessary to make yourself a perfectly edible meal.
Yeah. It seems, and this is something that is not mentioned, and they stop at the idea of it being a gruel or something made by mixing the softened wheat flakes, whatever, with water, or I presume milk. Would they have availability to milk or yogurt? Don't see why not. So anyway, whatever they're doing, they're taking it in liquid form. But another thing this article doesn't mention, it only briefly mentions it in the paper. There's one little sentence about these ceramic discs having been found at the site, which most people interpret as baking plates.
Yeah.
I'm going, well, hello. Maybe they're making, because from a porridge-like mixture, you can bake cakes, biscuits, whatever you like to call them. I can't claim the genius of extending that thought out. So my wife, no, it's Sharon, my wife said, well, why wouldn't it have been biscuits or cakes? I think, well, of course. Interesting. I hope we help break the mystery of the choice of gruel. Maybe it wasn't a choice of gruel. Maybe the nice muesli bars they were baking. I'd go for that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's taste, though, isn't it? I don't think we're making allowances for just variance in human taste.
No.
You might really fancy a bowl of soup, but not another boring piece of bread.
Oh, absolutely. But I said to you earlier, and in reference to the Durum wheat, and this is, again, something that hasn't been delved into in the paper, is the anomaly of the Durum wheat combined with the anomaly of the, whatever it is, not being ground to fine flour. And I think maybe there's a connection between that. I doubt very much they were making pasta, but you can make.
You've got to make a flour to make pasta, though. So
but if you make it, you still got to make a flour, to make semolina. But you don't have to grind it so fine. In fact, Durum wheat doesn't. That's the whole thing about Durum wheat. It doesn't grind fine. I'm wondering if it would leave the same remains on a grinding stone. Because the other thing you can Durum wheat's good for is making semolina, or it becomes semolina flour if you grind it. That's what semolina is. Then you mix that with milk or water. I know you never liked it at school, but it was served in British primary schools up until the 1980s. It was a staple. I used to love it. When was I at school? 1960, whatever. Something like that used to be one of the favourite things. I'm thinking, well, yeah, why not? If it's nourishing, fully nourishing, and you can flavour it with whatever you like.
It's a poultice.
And maybe that's why, they were choosing that over what? Maybe that's put it the other way around. Maybe they were preferring that to going the full hog and grinding it down to finally to make bread. I don't know.
No, it's intriguing any which way.
Yeah. Shall I carry on? Said enough for the moment. I finished. Okay. Together with senior researcher Niels H. Andersen, also from Muskard Museum, she led the study. That's Wilmut Ut, by the way, in case you'd forgotten. She led the study recently published in the scientific journal Vegetation History and Archaeobotany. What the grinding stones were used for remains open to interpretation, aside from the fact that they lack clear wear marks from the pushing motions used for grinding grain. The trough-shaped querns with traces of pushing movements emerged 500 years later. Oh, we're down another rabbit hole.
Yes.
The grinding stones we studied were struck with pestles made of stone, like crushing in a mortar. That's a different thing. I hadn't taken that on board. I've read this, and I hadn't sort of. Oh, hello.
Well, they did say they found hazelnuts.
Well, grind whatever you like to extract whatever.
I'm thinking more of because it says struck.
Yeah.
It specifically says struck, and it makes you wonder if it's a very easy way to crack a lot of nuts all in one go, isn't it?
Yeah, I would use the verb pound or pounding in terms of...
Do you know what I would have done too?
Yes.
But,
like this, but, for whatever reason, for nutritional reasons, for, extracting the flavour from berries or from whatever things, meadow sweet, I don't know, is that a thing? And we were talking earlier about...
yes.
Lots of stuff we've forgotten about what's available in nature. So-called weeds, wild stuff, wild plants. They say we also found pestles at the site resembling rounded, thick stone sausages. However, we've not analysed them for phytoliths or starch, explains Niels H. Andersen. Okay. This is the first time a state-of-the-art combination of phytolith and starch analyses has been performed on grinding stones from the first farmers in northern Europe. And just to reiterate that what you were saying earlier, that it's only when studies like this are done that the anomalies like this that break assumptions leap out. And you're saying, well, what else is going to leap out when they start doing studies on other coinstones from maybe Friedenlund isn't that much of an anomaly. It's just an anomaly because they've been looked at.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeez, so glad we did this. I hope you are. Oh, dear. The results support a hypothesis that archaeobotanists and archaeologists elsewhere in northern Europe also have proposed, after discovering remains of grains cooked into porridge and gruel, that the first farmers did not live on water and bread, but rather on water and gruel, alongside berries, nuts, roots and meat. And I would say they were perfectly capable, even if they didn't have bread, of making, solid, portable, edible nutrition, if that's the right way to put it. And yes, they likely drank water. According to Niels H. Andersen, no definitive traces of beer brewing have been found in Denmark before the Bronze Age. I think we know somebody who might like to query that statement.
Yes. I think we do, yes. Yes. Hats off
All
to
hail
Merrin
Dineley.
Yes.
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 In fact, I'll link to a paper of hers down below. I think she addresses this very topic.
Yeah.
Don't know if I can find it again. Hopefully I will do. Yeah. However, as the two researchers from Muskard Museum emphasise, this study only involves one settlement. While it supports other findings from the Funnel-Beaker culture, we cannot rule out the possibility of different results emerging when this method is applied to finds from other excavations. End of report.
Yes.
Ta-da! I can't think of anything else that we need to extrapolate from this little number?
Well, do you know, it raised so many questions for me. You know, so for example, when we've been hunting animals for however many thousand years, since before we were human, since before we were Homo sapiens, put it that way. How long have we been using suet? How long have we been using healthy fat from different parts of animals? And you think that even today we make some fantastic puddings and the like from the fat that collects around kidneys. So you know, looking at the ingredients that they're saying they've found evidence for this and this and this and this, you know, there's berries and nuts and all sorts. And you think, well, no, you could make yourself a very, very nice whole range of foodstuffs with those things that don't actually have anything to do with bread. And the principal thing that, you know, we mentioned a little bit earlier on about how much harder it is or how much more labour intensive it is to make bread as opposed to any number of other foodstuffs. The other thing that we can't ignore is the other things that you require to make bread, not least of all a good fire. You might not need an oven per se, but you do need a good fire. That you might not need a fire of that sort of intensity and size if you're just making yourself, you know, any number of those other things. I don't know how much you'd need to break fats down to make a good flapjack, but
anyway, it's food for thought. Oh, what a pun! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't see that one coming. Honestly, not planned.
Isn't it so intriguing? I'm now really two things that are really bugging me now. One is that they really need to start testing quernstones everywhere else just to see how much of that really was about quern cereals. And the other thing is doing an analysis of the starches, because they haven't done that here at Frodenland. Because that would be really interesting. I think, having said, you know, what we said before, that because they found mistletoe in some of the plant remains, because they found mistletoe and you can't eat mistletoe, it means they must have been using it for creating medicines of sorts. And mistletoe, it's even today, it can be incorporated into cancer treatments, anxieties, stress-related disorders. You know, so you think,
like I say, what have we lost? You know, in terms of, you know,
absolutely.
A grinding stone. It's looking at it from this end of the telescope now and thinking, well, why on earth would you jump to the assumption that a grinding stone represents grinding just for flour, for goodness sakes?
And yet
think of all the other stuff, all the other pulps and methods of extraction that you need to employ, you know, in order to get to the benefit of all the bounty there is around you. Listen, these are rabbit holes we could go down, but you know, next week we're likely to be looking at obsidian trade in the Aegean or bog bodies in Ireland. You know, we'll leave the debate over gruel and other stuff and things like that to you, dear folks. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you did find that entertaining and amusing and all the rest of it. As I said, do hit the like and subscribe button. Have a look at our Patreon page and the GÖBEKLI TEPE Stonehenge project page. Oh, did you know, Rupert, that you can now do a monthly subscription to the GÖBEKLI TEPE Stonehenge project via Buy Me a Coffee, as well as just giving a one-off donation.
Well, there's an advance.
Okay, just saying. And with that, it's time to say bye-bye. Bye-bye for now, folks.
Thanks for your support, folks. See ya. Bye-bye.
Bye. Right, and I'm not going to press stop record now, because there are folks, I presume, still with us who may be wanting to gouge their eyes out by this time. I don't know.